Can you live full-time in a van and still work in a high-paying job in the Australian outback? I did, and I want to tell you what that was like. Hello, I'm Jana and I live in a van. Today I would like to tell you about my FIFO fly-in, fly-out experience in the mine. How did I get there, what did I do there, and why I am there not anymore, at least for now. I am not here to claim that FIFO is the ideal job for van dwellers. But I must admit that getting a break from worrying about where am I gonna have a shower, where am I going to sleep, how am I gonna keep cold or hot, having food cooked for you and even a free washing machine, it can feel like a luxury to many of us. Heck, sometimes I would even sneak my bedding from the van into the camp to wash it for free. No matter how much we love van life, I think we all occasionally crave a few days in a worry-free place when we know nobody is going to bother us. But there are other jobs that go very well with van life, like seasonal work or being a digital nomad, so that's why I'm not saying FIFO is the best. But I'm convinced that a van is the perfect accommodation for a FIFO worker. Think about it, if you spend 2 or 3 weeks away every month, why should you be paying rent for a place you are hardly using? Unless, of course, you have a family at home. If you have wife and children, that's a different story, but for me it was perfect. Now let's get into it. Getting a job in the mines in Australia is not easy, especially without experience or a recommendation. And it's even harder if you don't have a permanent visa. So don't ask me how my friend got in with a working holiday visa. That's a mystery. But she did, and she actually helped me to get a job there too. Just to clarify, I'm on a permanent visa. I started as a nipper. What's a nipper? Basically, it's the person who supplies the drill operators with everything they need. Steel mesh, metal plates, rods, boxes of glue, etc. This is a jumbo drill rig. These are the machines that drill the steel mesh onto the walls. Our job was to make sure the operators had everything they needed. By the way, the pictures I am showing you are just for illustration. We weren't allowed to take phones down into the mine. It was similar, but not exactly the same. Before drilling, the nipper has to prepare a setup at the heading before the jumbo arrives. Usually, there were 3 to 5 setups to do each day. Thankfully, there were 2 nippers most of the time, so we could split the work. And sometimes there were no setups at all. Yoo-hoo! Every setup includes about 60 rods and plates, 9 to 12 steel mesh panels, which you have to lean against the wall like this, 6 heavy boxes of glue, and other bits and pieces. Sometimes, when I was all alone in the dark tunnel, I would think about the movie Alligator and freak myself out. Every day we checked each jumbo, we had 3, topped up their oil, asked the operators what they needed, and brought them the supplies. If things were quiet, I would stay with the jumbo and help put the rods into the arms. That job is usually called an offsider, but we didn't have one, so the nipper often helped out. We also had to look after our storage areas, keeping things tidy, ordering stock, and unpacking deliveries. We had our own vehicles to move everything around. The steel mesh was the worst, super bulky and hard to carry. We toted it behind the car. It's funny how one of the toughest jobs in the whole mine was mostly done by women. But the hardest part wasn't the physical work, it was the heat. Especially in the deeper parts of the mine, it felt like a sauna. And we were dressed like we were heading to the mountains. Gumboots with 2 pairs of thick socks, or they would fall off. Overalls, gloves, safety glasses, a helmet, a mask, and a warm belt with emergency oxygen. The mask was the worst in that heat. I was constantly soaked in sweat and dirty from head to toe. Definitely not a job for anyone worried about looking glamorous. Offsiding was technically easier, but the jumbo created so much extra heat that it was the hottest spot in the whole mine for sure. Everybody carried a 5-liter jug of water, and sometimes I drank almost all of it and still hardly had to pee. I sweated everything out. We worked 12-hour shifts, 7 days in a row, and then had a full week off. We rotated between day and night shifts because the mine ran 24/7. Like I mentioned in the beginning, it was FIFO. We flew to the outback of Australia and stayed in a little village with free food, a gym, a pool and tennis courts. Not that I had time to use any of that fancy equipment. 12-hour shifts sound brutal, but we didn't work non-stop. We started with a pre-shift meeting at 5:50, then went underground and had a coffee while waiting for the post-blast air quality to return to safe levels. That often took until 7, 7:30 or even 8. And near the end of the shift, we usually tried to be out of the hall by 5. So out of 12 hours, we were only working about 9 or 10. People often ask if it's dangerous. Honestly, safety is taken super seriously, and I wasn't afraid of cave-ins. The biggest risk is fire. If a machine catches fire, the smoke would fill the tunnels and make it impossible to breathe. That's why we all wore oxygen on our belts. There were emergency chambers everywhere, so you were never more than, I think, 700 meters away from safety. Even though being a nipper was pretty tough, I was determined to stick it out. Mostly because I liked the lifestyle and the $43 per hour pay. And I was hoping to get into the dump truck later on, which I actually did, and pretty quickly. I really enjoyed the truck. It had air conditioning, no heavy lifting involved, and you just drove your butt around. The tunnels only fit one truck, so you had to communicate on the radio and work out when to pull into a stockpile to let others pass. Loaded trucks going up had priority over empty ones going down, so you had to calculate where you would meet and where to pull over. It felt like a game, which I enjoyed. Even the loading wasn't boring. I imagine on the surface the truck just stands quietly while the loader does all the work. But that's not the case underground, because there's simply not enough space for that. The bogger would already be waiting in a stockpile with rocks. You would drive past him, he would reverse out, then you would reverse and get your first scoop. After that, you would move forward and let the bogger get another scoop. Usually, you would get 3. You had to maneuver the truck just right. Sometimes there was a slope, or a tight corner, or both. It was a fun challenge, and sometimes you would laugh at colleagues who got stuck, which thankfully never happened to me. Sometimes we would bring road base from the surface to offload underground into a stockpile. That was a whole other challenge. I even saw a truck get stuck there with its tray all the way up. Thankfully, not mine. But in the end, I lost the job. Not because of me, but because the mine shut down. Unfortunately, nickel is produced much more cheaply in Indonesia, and Australian mines couldn't compete. In total, I worked there for 8 months, and I really enjoyed both the work and the lifestyle. I'm starting to look for another job now. I'm thinking about getting some heavy rigid experience, because one day I would love to try a seasonal job driving a road train, either for harvest or in mining. But I'm definitely open to going back to the mines. I really do miss my little dump truck. Well, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!